Hey guys, what's up? Carter here. Got another video for you. This one's going to be kind of my opinions on automatics, their usefulness, if they're appropriate in any applications, things like that. First off, just as a disclaimer, anything and everything in this video is just my opinion based on my experiences and whatnot. No, I could be wrong. I could be right. You might be right. You might be wrong. We might all be wrong. Might all be right. Probably the latter is more correct. We're probably all right, just in different capacities and whatnot. But anyways, sometimes I get flack when I do videos like this, which is cool. That's fine. But anyways, moving on. We've got ProTech Brand 1 here. We've got a Paragon Devil's Tongue out the front automatic here. We've got a Rob Dalton. I think this is the Tiger one. Maybe it's the Tiger 2. I forget. One of the two. And then Spyderco Citadel. Very cool knife. Now, obviously, what are the advantages of an automatic knife? First and foremost is one-handed deployment. That's kind of why they were designed, for the most part, for one-handed deployment. As I understand, I know that some of the early automatics were designed actually for women. Now, I'm not sure if that just is referring to within the U.S. or if that's national. I think it was Schrade, at least in the U.S., that kind of came up with the first automatics, and they were actually designed for women to use when they were sewing to cut thread, because oftentimes their other hand was kind of bound up by something, and so these automatics were made so they could easily cut that thread. And I know there was automatics that were geared towards, I believe, fishermen, so that they could cut fishing line, because once again, oftentimes one hand was kind of taken up by another task, so the automatic allowed them to do that. And then somewhere along the line, they became evil. I'm not sure exactly when they became evil. I don't know if it happened like overnight, if some sort of spell was cast upon them or something, but they became evil at some point, and that's kind of where they've been ever since. Automatics definitely get a bad rap. I mean, seriously, who cares how the damn things are opened, I mean, who cares if a button is pressed and it opens? Anyways, that's another video. I have a bad habit of going off on different tangents, and that should be a different video. So one-handed deployment, obviously I know what you're thinking, is that there's a lot of knives that you can open one-handed, and that is very true. And another aspect of automatics is fast deployment. Very quick. Try not to hit my tripod there. But you could also argue that something like this Emerson, where you actually draw it out and it opens, is quicker, which is absolutely true. This Emerson, if you do it correctly, you can pull it out and it'll open up quicker than this. I mean, this would require you to pull it out, position yourself onto the button, press the button, then it's open. So it is quicker. However, one of the main differences, though, between the two is, in order to deploy something like this with that speed, there's a bunch of factors that need to be in place. One of which is your skill. You've got to kind of practice opening it. There's also a balance between how much force is required to do it and how well it kind of catches. It's very easy to try to do that deployment, the pocket deployment, have it open this way, only this far, maybe almost all the way open, but it's not actually locked. And if you were actually in some sort of situation where you needed to deploy your knife super fast, that could be a problem. If it opens up halfway, you go to grab it, it closes on you because it didn't quite deploy all the way. That's one thing where, this shines. Because aside from debris or something actually blocking the opening of the knife, there's no technique involved. It's just you press a button. You could be hanging upside down, you could be laying on the ground, you could have minimal space to work in, as long as you've got enough. I'm going to use a different one. That blade's too big. Keep hitting stuff. As long as you got enough space to allow the blade to travel open, you know, there's really no other factors involved. It doesn't matter what kind of pants you're wearing. You don't have to pull it out backwards like you do with an Emerson and things like that. There's also, you know, and I hate talking about this kind of stuff because it's kind of ridiculous, but it's fun to talk about. You know, talking about, and I'm referring to this whole, if you're in a life or death situation and this and that. And I also want to clarify, there's multiple life or death situations where you would need to deploy a knife quickly. Most people think of, you know, some sort of battle. You know, you're being attacked, or you need to stab somebody as a defensive weapon and things like that, which I think is probably the least likely of all. But it's still, once again, I think this deserves its own video, but it's still valid. But I think more importantly is the kind of emergency situation where you might be being dragged into some machinery. Let's say you get your tie caught into a lathe or other article, or your hair. Let's say you're somehow being dragged underwater. You're in a car, you need to cut your seatbelt, that kind of thing. Where you need to deploy a knife quickly, you might not have access to both hands, your motor control might be out the window, you're freaking out, you're full of adrenaline, and you're trying to save your life by cutting yourself free, more than likely, from something. And that's where an automatic is really helpful, because everybody knows, it's been talked about over and over again, that your gross motor functions, is it gross? I don't know, your fine motor functions, that's what I mean to say. Sorry, gross is the large motor functions. Your fine motor functions go out the window. It's one of the reasons why I hate safeties. They're just dumb. I don't like anything with safeties, really. This one doesn't even work very well. But you know, your functions like that kind of go out the window, and this may seem like an easy function, you know, we all do it 1,000 times, but if you're freaking out, it might not be quite so easy. I mean, you can slip off of here, you could have this thing upside down. I mean, you know, really that translates to any sort of knife, but that is a little bit more of a function. You've got to keep your thumb placed on the disc, and you've got to rotate it in a full motion until it's locked open. Whereas something like an automatic, you just have to press a button. Press a button and then it opens. And once again, factors such as pushing too hard, pushing too light, not opening it all the way, you know, putting your thumb on the wrong place, you know, none of that really plays into effect with an automatic. You press a button. It doesn't matter if you press it lightly, it doesn't matter if I press it hard, it opens the same and it locks the same. You know, that variability is kind of taken out. So I definitely think there is a place for automatics. I don't think that they are worthless or stupid. I know a lot of people are kind of against them. I think some of that just comes down to the fact that they can't own them or carry them, which, you know, I get. One of the reasons why I haven't really been into automatics lately is just because they are illegal for me to carry. You know, how big of a deal that is if I were to get caught with one, I don't know. I know I shouldn't say this, but I'm thinking it wouldn't be a big deal, but because in my mind, you know, these kind of things are usually tack-on charges, you know, where your house gets raided for drugs, they find some automatic weapons, knives, things like that. Well, here you can own them legally in your house, but if you're in a place where you can't, you know, and then you get busted for something else, it's just more charges they can tack on, or, you know, you get pulled over for doing something stupid or speeding, or you got drugs in your car and they frisk you and they find an automatic knife. That's just another thing they can kind of tack onto your charges just to make sure that something sticks, you know. But I could be wrong, so, you know, I could be wrong. One day maybe I'll have one of these in my pocket, I'll be walking down the street and I'll get thrown in jail. I don't know. I don't really risk it, so. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, the dislike of automatics. So I definitely think they have their place. They're really fun. They're really fun to play with. And my video's about to die. So please leave your comments, your opinions down below as usual. And I will read every comment. I read every comment. And I respond to ones that kind of need responding to. Alright guys, take it easy.